Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. My name is Nick Milkey. It is Sunday night. It is 8:30 where I live, and I'm here to hang out. I'm here to talk about Star Wars. I'm here on our second Sunday night of a live stream. The switched formats, going to this live show. I want to shout out my co-host, Steve. Steve is not with us. Steve is going to be on a break for a little while. Steve has a very, very busy full plate with a lot of cool stuff going on in his life. He's working hard. They're expecting their second child. He's in school. I think we've talked before. He is working on a doctorate program right now. So Steve has a plate full. And he said, keep going, keep doing shows, keep doing stuff. And so that gave me an opportunity to kind of transition us into the live stream, into this new mode of doing shows on Sunday night, hanging out, bringing on some really fun guests, smart people, much smarter than me, and, hopefully engaging with everybody in the live chat. So tonight, I have a great guest. I'm excited to bring on my friend David Drennan. David is a part of the As Father and Son podcast. I know they have a YouTube channel. He'll talk a lot more about that. David and his son Timothy do a great show, and I have asked him to join me tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about his Star Wars origin story. I wanted him to tell us about the podcast that they do, and then we're going to get into categories. That's kind of, I don't know, it's not like anybody's never done a Star Wars category before. I'm not breaking any new ground here, but it's fun. It gives us something to talk about. So tonight we're going to talk about a category, and I've asked him to kind of come up with his top arbitrary number. The number tonight is 7. There's no real reason behind it. I just decided to make 7, and we'll see if we can get all 7 of them in. But I'm glad y'all are here. I hope you're enjoying hanging out on a Sunday night. I hope everybody is doing well. And without any further ado, I want to bring in my friend David Drennan. David.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad that you're willing to hang out on a Sunday night.
Oh, absolutely, man.
Do that thing that we know we both love to do, which is talk about Star Wars.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. And I'm going to take a sip of what I'm drinking too. Because look at that. I'm so on brand tonight.
Man, this is podcast placement if I've ever seen it.
I'm not having fun drinking anything like what you're drinking. This is just some iced coffee I made earlier.
That is okay. I like that. We're gonna send you an extra tip for this afterwards.
Okay, yeah. Well, look at what else we have on there.
Pete, we're definitely gonna do some plugging. In fact, Pete's here. Pete's in the chat section. He's saying hello. Shout out to the silver colored knob guys. Absolutely. David, I'm so glad you're here tonight. We got to talk a little bit before we got started, and I know we both have kind of been on similar paths over the last little bit. We have communicated through Twitter. I've, loved keeping up with what you guys do, not only with your show, but with Silver Colored Knob and the fun stuff that you do with those guys. I heard when you guys were on Around the Galaxy, have just loved getting to know who y'all are through the internet and the magic of, really what we've all been dealing with for the last year now, of making new friends when nobody can leave the house. And the Star Wars fan community, the podcast community, I know for me has truly been a blessing. I have a wonderful family. We've gotten really good at being home together, as we like to say, because that's all we've done for the last 10 or 11 months. But having something like a podcast family, to have this group of friends on the internet that we get to laugh with, listen to their stories, hear all the things. I know we tagged each other back and forth in some Twitter messages after the Force Connect show last Friday night, when it got a little wild, and we're going to have to drag you into some of the shenanigans here coming up soon.
Yeah, I caught that on the rewind, and you guys had a lot of fun. So I have to make a point on a Friday night to figure out how to get online with you guys.
Absolutely. Well, here's what I'd love to do to get us started is I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your Star Wars origin story, how you came to Star Wars, what it has been for you, over the course of your life.
So I am an OT guy, an original trilogy guy, because I was just a little kid when it came out. So I did see it in the theater. My parents took me and my little brother, who's a couple years younger than me. I think I was 7, maybe almost 8. So I turned 8 in 1977, but that was a summer. And so, the movie had a long run. So I don't think we saw it when it first came out in May. But so I saw it. I remember seeing it. I remember that feeling of being at the theater and just it blowing my mind as a kid. And my brother and I, go home and we start playing it everywhere in the yard and at school. And then, forming fan clubs of our own at school and just having a really good time. And so that was my introduction to Star Wars, was the original Star Wars movie when it was, Star Wars. And then calling it A New Hope actually doesn't bother me at all. I think that's great that George had a plan and a name for it. So, but yeah, just as a kid, just growing up on Star Wars, I loved all things spaceships and sci-fi and things like that.
Mhm.
So when Battlestar Galactica came out, the original, I thought, oh, this is Star Wars on TV. So, I loved anything like that. But so yeah, so Star Wars has just always been there. In fact, I think I got this for like my 9th or 10th birthday, and I've had it ever since. It's missing the little knobs because it's broken. It doesn't work anymore. But yeah, it had the sticker on it, and I pulled the Star Wars sticker off because Hans didn't have a sticker on it.
That's right. It had to be official.
Yeah, I gave this to my son Timothy when he was a kid, but it's still at the house, and I just
so cool.
It doesn't make any sounds anymore, but I can do it with my mouth if I wanted to.
Honestly, the sound you make with your mouth is better than the sound that the real one makes.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. I don't know if you ever took yours apart. I took mine apart as a kid to try to work on it, and it's just a little spinning gear that a little piece of metal would go across and just go.
It is, in fact. Yeah. Andy and those guys over at the Holo Chronicles. And so there's another YouTube feed, Toy Polloi, and these guys that restore all these vintage toys and all that stuff. I couldn't tell you how many hours I've watched of YouTube videos of people taking them apart and spinning the motor. Right. And, as I've tried to recollect a lot of the things, that I had as a kid, this blaster being one of them.
Yeah.
I had one as a kid as well, and it got lost. I say all the time, we moved 3 times when I was in 3rd grade. And I think that probably contributed to the disappearance of some of the things that I held so dear. And so a few years ago, actually, after I went to Celebration in Orlando, I went with a buddy of mine who's a big collector, and he just kind of got me jonesing for recollecting a lot of the things that I was missing. And so this was one of the first purchases. And when I got it, I had little hope that it might work. And sure enough,
oh yeah,
it kind of sounds like a motor, a boat out of water, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't heard that sound in a long time.
That's right. Well, it's not as good as this real sound. So, but it's so funny that
not.
The X-Wing does that. The Falcon does that. They all just have that motor with the little plastic tab, and the plastic tab hits the teeth on the motor, and it just makes a high-pitched whine.
Oh, sure.
I think one of the coolest ones is the Troop Transport. It had that little mini record player inside of it. And when you hit the different buttons, it would do 3PO or the laser blast, or that one was a trickier one to take apart. It made me very nervous, but I got it to work, so that was fun. So yeah, so you got that. That's amazing that you have that from your active childhood.
Yeah, I have that. So yeah, growing up, I was always Han Solo. I had a dorky 3-piece blue suit that you wore in the 70s that my mom made me wear to church, and it had a vest. And so as soon as I could, church was over, everything came off but the vest and a pair of black pants with a white shirt, and I was outside holding that gun. There's a picture of me somewhere holding that gun, like trying to look like Han did on the picture of the box of his action figure. It's like when he's looking up, there's a pose that I did. So yeah, I had it all. I always made my little brother be Chewie. I think he still resents me to this day for that. But it's funny because my text image of him, when he texts me, I have it named Chewie, and there's a picture of Chewbacca that pops up.
Fantastic. So you got to keep little brothers in mind.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so no, I've been a fan ever since, and went through the lull that we all went through before the prequels, as Pete and Ken Nabscott. I said this name totally wrong. Sorry, but I'm a reformed prequelist, so I do enjoy them now. There was that period of time when they didn't land for me, but then over time they're really on the rewatch. They're great, and so I love them all. Anyway, fast forward to today. I also love anything Star Wars. I'm just one of those. Sure, there are things I could nitpick about it, but I'm just not one of those guys that's going to talk about the things I didn't like. I'd rather talk about things I do like, and so that's what I'm always about. It's just the positivity in the fandom. So fast forward to my son Timothy. He's so he was my buddy. So growing up, there's all the playtime, all the lightsabers that they came out with in the 90s and the 2000s, he and I were always playing. And so as he grew up, graduated college, got married, he and I are just always talking Star Wars. And so he's married now and he moved out, but anytime his wife would come over, we were just always, the conversation's always Star Wars. And I said one time a couple of years ago, we're always talking Star Wars all the time. We ought to just start our own YouTube channel, just kind of off the cuff joking. And I was like, we could be just as father and son, because that's what Vader says to Luke, join me and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. And we joked about it. And then one day we were just like, let's do it. And we just fired up a camera at his house. We captured ourselves playing Super Nintendo Super Star Wars, and it was really just a test run, and we decided to put it out as a video. So that's our first video. So now we don't have a lot of videos, but we don't have a huge channel, but we do have some that have done pretty well before The Rise of Skywalker came out. We did a couple of Ben Solo videos that one of them's got over 600, the other one's was like a dual. He did one and I did one, and one of them's got almost 300. So I mean, that's like, for us, that's huge. We got 600 views. Wow, that's like we're never going to be YouTube famous, but that's amazing to us. So
it's so fun, and that's what I love about what we do. I didn't set out to do this because I thought I was going to get internet famous or podcast famous or any kind of famous. And it was funny, after I started doing this, it really started with Steve, my buddy. We were talking one day at a Christmas party and we were like, we both love Star Wars so much. We've known each other. Why don't let's make a podcast? And this was 3 years ago. Yeah, that's what we do. And early on, my wife was like, well, who do you think's going to listen to that? I said, to be perfectly honest, I'm like, I'm not sure I care. It's a chance to talk with my friend who feels the way I do, or at least on that level of wanting to dig in. And it's so fun. I was actually working out here in what I call my studio earlier today, and I found in a drawer the very first podcast episode that we recorded. I actually used a microphone from the game Rock Band because it had a USB plug on it, and I could plug that into my computer. And so I was just like, this is what I'm starting with. So
that was very
my podcast starter kit. I don't know. And, we're slowly making our way, but that's the whole thing too, is even now, like doing these live streams on Sunday nights, just the chance to interact with, our friends that we've met along the way that feel the way we do and enjoy, the same thing, hanging out. Because as much as the people in my house love me, they don't want to talk about Star Wars nearly as much as I do.
Right. That's what Timothy and I realized, is that we're always having this conversation, and our wives are like, we're trying to have dinner or we're trying to watch a movie together or something. And so that's why I was like, it doesn't matter if anybody watches the channel with us. We're just having this conversation. Let's share it if anybody wants to. And so we've done a few live streams. Like I mentioned before we got on the call, a couple of those last year. We might do some more. We actually were just talking this last Friday on some other things we might try to start doing. So there's some new stuff coming down that we might try to do. So stay tuned. Hopefully the as father and son stuff that we do, we'll get more. But last year, just everything came to a screeching halt for us because we're a duo and we wanted to do it together. And that's why we tried the live streams, but also March of last year, Timothy had his first baby. And so he's been super busy. He had a new baby, COVID hit, he got a new job, and he's just not had the time that we had prior. But I do not have a baby of my own. That is my grandson's, just FYI. So when he comes over, that's his high chair.
Absolutely. And I want to throw this comment up here. Michael chiming in, All Remaining Systems. He says, it's not about the fame. It's about the fun and the connections made along the way. And
that's it.
Pump that out even more. And I also loved what you mentioned a minute ago, as you were talking about your Star Wars story. You and I are, of a similar enough age that I went, I was an original trilogy kid too, went through the quote unquote dark time, got the prequels, and, I like you, I can nitpick, and kind of that's the fun. Like if we were to sit down and have a couple of beers somewhere and be like, what about this? Or what if they had done, for me, it's always the, what if they had done this, not the, I'm so angry because they didn't do it the way I wanted it to. Yeah. And so I love, and of course, the internet is terrible for those kinds of things, but I love you use the word positivity. And, I know I've tried to push out there, and others have kind of tried to put out there whenever we can, hashtag spark of positivity. And, that's what we want to be. That's what I want our show to be. We're going to have fun. We may say, I wish they had done this, or I may even say, I don't like something, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to go burn something down because I don't like it.
Right. Yeah. No, that's what I appreciate about your show and other shows, that I've found via Twitter and through YouTube, is that I'm trying to find the people who are being positive. And I don't mind other podcasts who talk about things they don't like in a positive way. It's okay to talk about those things without all being negative and haters. But that's the fun thing about what we do, is that we do get on here for the fun of it, for the love of it. And I did just do a video last week that we released. It was actually an audio recording from over a year ago that we just held on to because of everything that's happened in the world. And one of the things that I was saying in that is that we want to continue to stay positive, and even if there's something that you don't like. I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was thinking about the prequels. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Even during that time, I didn't get mad and hate George or anything for it. I just was like, okay, well, they were what they were, and moved on, with my life. So, sorry, I kind of went on a rant.
No, that's fantastic. And I think that's exactly right. And I talk a lot about, of course we make the jokes about, these are space wizard movies designed for kids. And that's absolutely true. I'm just a kid who didn't let go of that part of my childhood, and I'm fine with that. But for me also, the thing that I feel like I come back to a lot is it's art, and art is supposed to be subjective. Exactly. Art is not supposed to be only for me or only what I want. And honestly, if it's good art, it's going to challenge me. Like, it's going to make me think about it and go, I don't know how I feel about this. The best example is leaving Last Jedi, and I was just speechless. Like, I didn't know what to think. I didn't hate it. I wasn't sure I liked it. It took time, and it took time for me, of course, to see it again. But the more I thought about it, like even just in my own head, processing it and going, okay. And those, the little bubbles kind of started to go off. Like, this is what I get about it. And this is why, to me, it's actually brilliant. But there was never a point in any of it that I felt entitled enough to go, somebody's art that they made wasn't exactly how I thought it should be. So, let me go set a couch on fire in the middle of my neighborhood or something.
Well, this video that I'm talking about, this audio portion of it that we put on last week, one of the things I say is that I went into and I try to approach Star Wars from my mentality from when I was a kid. You were just saying, you're still that kid inside. And I'm going to go to it and be like, okay, my kid self wouldn't have nitpicked this, this, and this, and this. I would have just been like, I'm a kid, enjoy it. So that's why I try to approach Star Wars as a kid and have that mentality. I mean, I don't mean to be a juvenile, but just because a kid goes in with a clean slate. A kid goes in like, I just want to see something cool and enjoy it. And so one of the things I did say in the audio portion of that was that George may not have gone the route I wanted him to, but it was his. It was his to do with what he wanted, and it was only mine to either enjoy it or to not. But it wasn't his. He wasn't supposed to do what I wanted. He was doing what he wanted. It was his.
That's right. And for me, and the same thing. I love what you said about as a kid, I came in clean. There was never. I can reflect back on being a kid and watching Star Wars, and it was when the prequels came out was the first time that I even considered being critical of Star Wars. And sure, there was expectation there. I was halfway through college, or a little bit past halfway through college. So I thought I knew everything. I was an idiot, but I thought I knew it all because I'm not living at home and I'm out on my own and whatever. But it was that whole, just that idea of, I never once considered, hey, I should be mad about this or I should pick it apart. Even reading all the crazy, ridiculous EU novels that I read in between Dark Time, I was like, yeah, it's a clone Luke and a clone Jorah Saboth in the Heir to the Empire trilogy. But okay, fine. And so to see that, and then I think the other part of it for me is what I've been able to experience with my kids. I talk all the time. I've got 4 daughters. I've got twins that are 12. I've got an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And taking my older girls, the last couple of movies that came out in theaters, going to see it with them, they're just there. They're just in. They're just ready to have a good time. They're not coming in going, well, I hope they do this. And if they don't do this, I'm going to riot. And if they don't do this, they just came into it because they're like, ooh, fun. We get to go to the movies and see Star Wars.
Yeah. That's the Timothy when The Phantom Menace came out. Did it come out in 99?
Yes.
Is that right? So I think he was still 6 when it came out. So he's 6 years old. And so me seeing it through his eyes, I realized that, hey, this is still Star Wars because my son's coming out talking like Jar Jar Binks, doing lightsaber noises, having fun. And so for me, it didn't land where I wanted it to. But for my 6-year-old, he wanted to go home and play in the yard.
That's right.
And Dad, let's be, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon or whatever. I'll be Darth Maul or whatever. So I mean, that's what Star Wars is all about, and that was George's intention, was to write it for kids. So.
It absolutely is, and I think you talked about playing Han Solo growing up in the vest, and I love that whole thing. My oldest daughter, Harper, she's the one out of all my girls that really loves Star Wars, and she's the one. We got up at 5 o'clock in the morning every Friday to watch Mandalorian before she went to school a couple months ago, back when they were still going face to face, while everybody else slept another hour. She had to catch it right then. I want to see it when you see it. But she has done the same thing. Han Solo is her favorite character. And so she has a pair of black jeans and a white shirt and a vest.
Nice.
And all she ever wants to do is she wants to come out. She's like, hey, can I go get your blaster? I'm like, I really don't want you to take that outside. So I had to get her own.
I love it. That's a great story.
Oh, it's fantastic. And
that's funny.
She loves it.
So you got her something new so she wouldn't have to play for you.
I did. I actually got her the 96. It's the one from Disney's. It's not from Galaxy's Edge. It's the other Star Wars where Star Tours was, whatever they called that part of at Disney. Somebody sold one on eBay. It was from like 96, and I got it for her for Christmas this year. And it actually makes real laser sounds, not the kind that mine makes. But
cool.
Now she has her own. So
when Timothy was very little, now you can see behind me, I don't have any Star Wars paraphernalia. This is Timothy's old room. Now it used to have Star Wars stuff, but this is our guest room. And someday I'm going to have a room that is my room, but I don't yet. I do have an old shoebox of Timothy's, because I had to hide these, because when he was old enough and he had seen A New Hope and Empire, he was probably 5 before Phantom Menace came out. I had all my original action figures, and from when I was a kid, all of them in this box. And he was like, Daddy, can I play with your toys? Can I please play with your toys? So I let him play with these toys. I come in the room, and this Bespin Leia was in pieces on the floor. And I was like, what have you done? Thankfully, she snapped back together, and I said, you know what, son? These are going to go back in this box and way up high in Daddy's closet where you can't reach them. And we immediately started getting him what was out at the time, which was Powers of the Force.
Power of the Force too. Absolutely.
Yeah, which I think you guys actually sent me some.
You did. You won our Twitter giveaway.
They're going to be on display at some point. Yeah, I did win a giveaway.
Love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Those now, but yeah. So Timothy has a chest in our shed outside up in the attic, and he's got a chest full of Star Wars action figures that someday he's going to have to go to his house. He now that he has a son, there'll probably be a few more years.
It'll be time. That's right. Time for the heads of his to be broken off,
right? Exactly.
Buried in the yard.
Yeah.
Well, that's such a great transition as we're talking about family, and obviously you have amazing family connections, with Timothy and growing up with Star Wars. I have it with my girls, and so as I said in our intro, and as I've kind of said for transitioning into this new version of doing the show, we're still going to do at some point what I call our canon episodes. Next up is we're going to break down Empire into some different categories and look at all that. But in these in between shows, I decided there's never enough lists in Star Wars. We never spend enough time just ranking things. And so I decided to throw one at you that I hoped was a little bit on brand with what you guys do. So what I have asked David to do, listeners, is I asked him to come up with his top 7 parent or parental moments in Star Wars. I actually don't know if I gave him much more clarification or instruction beyond that. And I wanted it that way. I wanted you just to kind of feel free to run with it. I didn't say just the movies. I didn't say, we have so many, obviously, mentor moments, parental moments. Not everything is a parent. But that's what I wanted us to do tonight. And he was game to take on that challenge. Absolutely. So we're going to jump in. And I think, what is your number 7 top parental or parent moment?
Well, let's just make this real quick, that all 7 are comprised of everything that Din Djarin has done with Grogu, and then we're done. Conversation over.
That's right. We're just done.
There's no reason. Yeah, that's it. No, it's all about the new dad. Yeah. No, I do actually have a list. So
outstanding.
So it was really kind of tough, because as I made the list, I just started thinking of things in my head and writing them down. And I had to order them well, okay, which one's 7 and which one's 1 and everything in between. So here's what I've come up with, and we can talk about them. The first couple here are not going to be from the films, because they're great moments. But the first one is Kanan Jarrus' sacrifice for the family, because let's be honest, the team of the Ghost crew are a family, and Kanan and Hera are their parents. I mean, let's just be honest. That was a great parental moment when he did what he had to do, and he knew to get them to safety, and he's blocking all that fire. And I didn't go rewatch it before this, so it's not 100% fresh, but I know what he did, and it was the sacrifice that he did that stuck out to me. That he knew what he had to do. He had to protect the ones he loved. And that's what a parent does, no matter what. Even if it's, making sure your kid puts their seatbelt on. That's what a parent does. You're doing what you have to do to protect your family and your children. And I see that for me, Kanan and Ezra, their relationship really did become, I think, more of a father-son type relationship in a way. A lot more, I think, than some of the other master Padawan relationships that we see. I think the only other one I can think of that was as close to being father-son would be Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. I think there was, a lot there that I think was more father-son than brother, because I think Obi-Wan and Anakin were more brother. But so Kanan's sacrifice to me just really sticks out in my mind as a great moment that you can look at that from, even though he wasn't the natural father for any of them, he was their father role model for all of them. I mean, even Zeb. I mean, even Chopper. All of them. He and Hera had to rein them all in because they.
That's right. And I'm kind of working my way slowly through a rewatch of Rebels. I have said this more times than I should say out loud. But the hill that at this point in Star Wars I'm prepared to die on is Star Wars Rebels. To me, is the best of the Disney era Star Wars storytelling. I love Last Jedi. I love everything that they've done. I haven't gotten as much into Resistance. I hear that common among, some of us, of a certain age. I'm going to go back and give it a try because, again, it's Star Wars, and why wouldn't I watch it? But Rebels for me is the one, and just like everybody else, I think I came to it a little bit late. The first couple episodes, I thought this is kind of a kid show, but it hits in the middle part of that first season. And it just keeps getting better, and it gets better. And, it is such a good story about family. And they talk about that all the time. It's, Phoenix Squadron and, the Ghost Crew and what they do. And I even love, and the way you said it, with Hera and Kanan, those little moments that they put in there, like the two of them in the cockpit of the Ghost as they're heading somewhere after he's just broke up a fight between Ezra and Zeb. And the door closes and she's like, well, you brought this on yourself. Like, it's a husband and wife kind of interaction. Like, they play off of each other so well, and even not to catch it early on when, even in, I think, the first episode when Hera calls him, she's like, you did it, love, or whatever. And I missed it early on. But as it, as you kept watching develop, like, there really is, of course they have that relationship. But again, how they serve, and of course the relationship he has to Ezra is so good. But you're right, that last, it's not the last scene, but that sacrifice episode, when he's turning and he's got both arms out and he's holding the fire back and he's holding them back with that ship. And of course, it gets chills. Those eyes go clear again. Yeah. And he throws her back. And as I watch it, the dad part of me, the husband part of me, the worst comparison or parallel I could make is like when we go walking in our neighborhood. And I always say, I'm going to walk on the street side. You guys need to be on the other side of me, because I think if a car comes barreling in, I'm just going to stop it. But that's what we would do. That's what you would do for your wife, for your kids.
In the way of danger.
Put yourself in the way of danger, because if I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to sacrifice for them. And we see that. And that's why it also hits, is because we all feel that. We all, it's a familiar feeling and story. So we're off to a fantastic start already. So
awesome.
That's awesome.
All right. Cool. All right. So my number 6, that was number 7. So number 6 would be something also, again, not from the movie, but not from a TV show. But I don't know how many of you have read this excellent book, Bloodline, by Claudia Gray. I love this book. In fact, this was my number 1 top favorite book. Until she wrote Master and Apprentice, and that trumped it. But but this book has a moment in it, and the moment, I'm not going to read it, even though I bookmarked it here, just so I could remember it. But the parent I'm talking about is Bail Organa, and so the fact that he was willing to, Sorry, Siri.
That's right.
Can I turn her off? She keeps popping up. So Bail Organa and I lost his wife's name, but the fact that they took in Leia and became parents and loved her as she was their own. He leaves her a message that she doesn't get. If you've read, I don't want to spoil Bloodline, but there's a message that he left for anybody that hasn't watched it. I'm sorry, the spoilers, but read Bloodlines. It's really good. But the whole crux of the message to Leia, she didn't get. It was left with someone off of Alderaan, off planet, so that one day he could tell her the truth of her birthing and the truth of her mother and the truth of her father. But obviously she found out the hard way.
That's right.
But the rest of the galaxy didn't. And that's how the rest of the galaxy finds out, is because someone spills this secret that they find Bail Organa's message. But the message that he left her was just so, I might have to look at it just for a minute here. Just
absolutely.
That, I mean, he just, the point that he's making is that she never asked. She didn't care. She didn't want to know, or she never was that curious about her mother and father, because she accepted them. And to me, that was the parenting part of what he was doing. Was he was keeping a secret from her for her protection, which parents, sometimes you have to do, but also the fact that she accepted them as her family, knowing that they weren't her real mother and father. That was the best parenting, I think, that I can think of. Is it doesn't matter that she wasn't theirs. They loved her as though she was theirs. And then he left her this message, saying that you've never expressed much interest in knowing about your birth parents. And so many times I've told you your mother and me are the only father and mother you've ever needed, or she told them that. But he goes on to say how Obi-Wan took her brother, and how Padme was her mother, and that she, did die. And the whole message that he leaves her is this message. I don't want to read the whole thing. It's going to take too much time, but he leaves her this message in love, because he's hoping that he'll have already had a chance to tell her, and that thing, she can never know until the Emperor and Vader are defeated. But to me, the fact that he just left this message as a, maybe I'll tell you in person one day, but if I don't get to, this message is out there. Because as a parent, he still wanted her to know the truth. He still wanted her to be able to know her heritage and her ancestry. And so I don't know. That one may not be as strong as the Kanan one, but it was just something that I felt very strong about, that Bail was trying to be a good dad by leaving her a little something about who she is, in case he wasn't ever around to tell her.
Absolutely. And it reminds me of something else, but I'm not going to bring it up yet because it may be in your list, and I don't want to get out ahead of you.
Okay. But I can't wait to hear yours.
but it rings like something else. So we'll see how it goes. But no, I think that's fantastic. And I love that book.
Oh gosh, I know. I love her.
Really good. In fact, I feel like I need to reread it again. Because
it was the first Star Wars book of any Star Wars book that I've read more than once. I think I know I've read it twice. I may have read it a third time, but
that's fantastic.
Usually I read them once and I'm kind of good. Mm-hmm. This one, so good, I had to read it again.
Absolutely worth it. Well, that's awesome.
So that was a father leaving a message for a daughter. My number 5, maybe where you were going, but is a father leaving a message for a daughter. So we're into the movies now. We're still not into the Skywalker saga.
That's right. I think I know exactly where you're going.
Galen Erso leaving his message to Jyn,
yes, sir,
is so powerful. And that scene is so well acted for it to be a hologram, and then the look on her face, because I don't know if you've read Rebel Rising, which is the story of Jyn as a young girl. She really thinks her father has abandoned her. That's right. She thinks that he went off to be with the Empire. She doesn't know why in all these years has he not tried to find her. But then in that one message, all it takes is for her to hear his voice, Papa. And, this is the dad saying, I did everything I did for you. I've done everything I've done to protect you. I stayed here to protect you so they wouldn't find you. He left her with Saw Gerrera and all that. Everything was to protect her. And that's what a parent does. And so that's such a great parental moment for me, because in that moment, he is getting to, in this message, I hope you see this, but everything I did for you, my Stardust, you know, and I get chills thinking about it. And the look on freaking, I mean, her face was just like so perfect, and the tears and the realization that my dad did love me, and he actually did something to thwart the evil empire and hopefully destroy this machine they've created, this Death Star. And in that message, I just, that's what a dad, to me, if you can't be there for your child because extenuating circumstances are keeping you from it, you're still, everything in your head is turning, what can I do to protect my child? I can't be there for them, but I'm going to do whatever I can. And in that moment, Jen realizes that her dad didn't abandon her.
That's right.
I mean, what a great moment.
And you're right. The acting in that scene, and, you know, again, on the things, every time somebody says something about anything in Star Wars, I'm like, well, crap, now I need to go rewatch that. Like, not right now. I'm like, as soon as I get done, I need to go watch that scene, and then Rebels, and then, all of it. But it is. And like you said, the acting, even through a hologram, but just especially Jen, the way that emotion is carried, you know, on her face in that moment of silence, right before everything, you know, the building falls apart and the planet blows up. But it's incredible. That's a really great one. And that's what it felt like, you said, or as it triggered for me when you were talking about Bale's message to Leia, you know, a father leaving a message for a daughter. And that was exactly where my mind went, was, and we see that again. And, you know, you could have, you know, some of the people that say, you know, Star Wars is poetry, and sure it is. I think there's enough distance between, you know, what Claudia Gray did and what they did with Rogue One to necessarily seem that it was 100% intentional, but I don't care. It's awesome.
Right. You can make that connection yourself and be like, it's intentional because I want it to be, and I feel like it is. And it speaks to me in that way. So that's all that matters.
Without a doubt. That's fabulous.
Speak to us? It's art. We said that at the beginning. It's art. So it's subjective to what we feel about that art.
Absolutely.
All right, so my number four. I'm not going too fast.
No, this is awesome.
We could talk more about all of this if you want in between, but
that's right. We may have to circle back at the end after I got a whole picture. Then we know what we're talking about. True.
So number 4 is we're in the movies now, so we're gonna just go straight to Return of the Jedi with Vader and Anakin's return. And in that moment, as a parent, he now knows he's got a son and a daughter. And, you know, even though just a few minutes before he was going to turn the daughter to the dark side if he could get to her, in the moment that he sees his son calling out, you know, Father, help me, and the lightning's coming out of Palpatine's fingers. And I love in the original version, I know they changed it, but I love in the original version that quiet moment where you just see Vader's head, body, helmet turn, look back at the Emperor, look back at Luke. And it's like in that moment, he makes that decision and he just reaches out and grabs him and throws him off. Because in that moment, the parent, Anakin Skywalker, was like, this is my son and I have a daughter. And I feel like Anakin woke up because he was standing there watching his son be tortured with that dark side electric, you know, lightning. And he was standing by his Emperor, but something snapped and Anakin woke up. And thankfully, the good that was in him was still there. And that was the only thing he could do as a father in that moment, was stop his son from being hurt. And somebody hurts my child, I'm going to stop him. And so he was watching it happen. And what did he do? He reached out and he defeated the Emperor. Until he came back, but that's fine because the Emperor can do, you know, that's fine. The Emperor had clones. I mean,
the Emperor did have clones, and as a tiny sidebar to that one particular issue that so many people have issue with, of all the things that people have issue with in Rise of Skywalker, honestly, am perfectly fine with Palpatine being the ultimate big bad, because what we know about Palpatine from Episode 1 in Phantom Menace. He was a shady he was working. He was the big picture. He was the big, you know, we know, you know, even from old canon books and new stuff. Yeah. He was always obsessed with living forever and afterlife. And it was all about power. And so to me, it was one of the decisions of all the things that people might've complained about in that movie. It made the most sense to me that he was going to be from start to finish the ultimate big bad. And he ultimately had to be ended. I had no issue with that one.
Right. And I feel like even with all of the stuff on Disney Plus now, we're going to see more of that, just like we saw in The Mandalorian, whatever those things were in they looked like Snokes in the glass. I think that what they're doing, part of my theory is that it does have to do with cloning. Obviously, there's the Kaminoan symbol on the dude's shoulder. So they're tying it all together now. And so it has continuity. And I like that. I like the interconnectivity of it and the continuity of it. And it does make sense. I mean, he's freaking the Emperor. In his Operation Cinder, he had his face on all of those what were they called, those droid things. I can't remember what they were called now. Anyway, but that was part of his plan. So there was always a plan we knew about. Even in the Aftermath books, there was a plan. So now we know that plan was to clone himself. Okay, that's right. Cool.
Yeah, cool. Makes sense. It's kind of always been there, and he's always been that big of a bad guy. He's always been shady, underhanded. To bring it back to Rebels, he's trying to trick Ezra, in that whole, scenes towards the end of that last season. It's all about getting what he wanted, and what he wanted was to last forever, to keep that power.
He's the ultimate puppet master.
The puppet master, for sure. Well, and in that moment you talk about with Vader and Anakin in Return of the Jedi, and I love what you said, because that's what sticks out to me too. In the non-special versions, before they made the changes to it, the power in that silent moment of Luke's just getting roasted, and that audio kind of fades a little bit, so that all you're really getting is the breathing and him, looking, and that he's making that decision. He is processing. We talk a lot about Mandalorian and acting inside of a mask, and how good, that is. And you can see what Pedro does. And one of my favorite Easter eggs was from the episode, the non-Grogu episode, with when they go to the base and he wears the tank driver outfit. One of the things I love, that little teeny tiny moment, was when he has to take the helmet off, when they sit down to have the drink with the officer. His body language is still that of somebody who's worn a helmet the majority of their life. So like when he turns, he turned his whole body, and it's that teeny tiny acting choice that I'm like, this is amazing. But again, the acting with him in a mask, and that same scene in the Vader scene you're talking about, is you don't see anything except that black mask and the lightning reflecting off of it. Right. But you know what's going on.
You can tell in that scene. All of it. Just read it. Right. You can read his body language, and then just the way he turns, and he's like, nope, you're not doing this. I'm stopping this. And then, there's the touching moment. Probably the first time I ever cried in Star Wars, maybe in the movie theater as a kid, was when that very soft Imperial March is playing after Luke takes the helmet off, and it's the ding, 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 ding. And, he's saying, you were right. Tell your sister you were right.
Your sister, you were right.
In that moment, there was that redemption, and the father was able to be reconciled with son and daughter. And that's just, to me, that was a great parent moment, even though he was a horrible parent and he didn't know he was for most of his life, but he was horrible up until the moment he wasn't. I mean, that's what redemption is about.
I would say that's the power of redemption. That's the, the story. I want to hope that if I was a terrible person all my life and I reached a point where I went, I can't be this, and I asked for forgiveness, somebody would give it to me, and that I would be able to get, that same, again, these are those tones. It almost seems like George Lucas knew what he was doing, that he pulled on those strings, that he said, people are going to respond to this. Of course they are.
I sure did.
Yeah, it's great. So that's excellent. Well, that's a great one.
All right. So number three, it has a part A and part B kind of because they go hand in hand. So number three, so first of all, is from The Force Awakens, when Han Solo calls out his son's name, and it echoes on that, that whatever that I don't know what to call that thing, that ramp, that rail that they were on.
the continual railless,
bridge. And he just says, Ben, you can just, it's just so powerful and emotional, because to me in that moment, that was Han Solo being a father, calling out desperately to the son that he failed, and he knows he failed. He wasn't the best dad. He wasn't a great parent. But in that moment, he's calling out desperately, hey, Ben, that's your name. I'm your father. I still care. I still love you. And when he calls it out like that, I just get chills every time, because I can hear the emotion in Harrison Ford's voice, that it's like truly you're desperate, calling to your child, Ben. And he's mad in one way. It's kind of an angry Ben, but it's also that undertone of, I'm angry because I failed you. You've turned out this way because I wasn't where I should have been to you, but here I am. I'm here now. And that's when they approach each other, and Ben says, will you help me? And Han's like, anything,
Of course I will.
anything. So yeah, there was deception in that moment from Kylo Ren, but in that moment, the parent that Han should have been showed up just for enough redemption in my eyes, that whatever bad parent he was there when it mattered the most. That here is the most desperate moment in your life. You're going to do something really evil, or you're going to make a change. And he ended up doing the evil thing, but Dad was there. And Dad was there to do whatever Dad needed to do in that moment. And sadly, it turned out the way it did. But part B of that is Leia. So Han calling out Ben's name, Leia actually reaching Ben through the Force. So she couldn't be there in person. But I feel like when she laid down and when she entered into, I believe, a trance, that she was in the Force. And that's why when Kylo Ren is fighting with Rey on Death Star 2, and then, he pauses, I believe he definitely heard her, maybe even saw her. But when he gets distracted, it's because Mom is calling me. And I can't ignore that. And I have to stop for a second. And so it really is, I love how they played it out with the repeat of Han showing up. And I choose, as we were talking earlier, I choose to believe this is the connectivity. I believe that Leia sparked that memory, even though she wasn't there for it in the Force. I believe, even though he tells Han, you're just a memory. I was like, yes, your memory. But I believe his mother is totally at play there within the Force, bringing that memory and replaying that scene, because what should have happened in The Force Awakens is now going to happen, and Ben's going to do the right thing.
That's exactly
and that right. that's an in tandem moment. Even though Han was only a memory, Leia, I believe, was using that memory so that the two of them, it wasn't just Leia now reaching out, it was both Han and Leia, the memory of Han and the present Leia right there in the Force, bringing their son back. And so even though she wasn't evidently a great mother either, because she had her failings too, and she was off doing her thing with the New Republic and then doing her thing with the Resistance, that she failed him too. But when it comes right down to it, to not be the worst parent in the world, you got to have that moment where you're like, I got to do what I have to do for my child. So those are redeeming things about them not being great parents, but they did what they had to do to save their son.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of almost what I call the parental voice. Han in that scene in Force Awakens, like, when my kids are acting nuts and I'm trying to get them to calm down and everybody's just one on top of another, there's a dad voice that I can turn on. And it's the same one that my father turned on. And it gets deep and it gets loud and it only lasts for a moment. But when I do it, everybody stops and everything hits. On the same token, what Leia does is what my wife can do with those girls. And it doesn't have to be the same, the barking dad voice. It's the firm but gentle mom voice that goes, hey, I need you to look at me right now. I need, it's not the same, but it garners that same kind of attention.
Right. It carries the same weight in
absolutely.
a different way.
Absolutely. It's, it's
great call out, dude. That was really, I like that. That's exactly what Leia did. What you're talking about, what your wife doing. Yeah.
Yeah. It hits. And so as you were saying that, I'm going, yeah, I've had those moments. I've barked at my kids and got them to snap into place. And it could have been a kid darting for the street, or it could be everybody's being nuts and I need you to stop, or I've already asked you 5 times to stop, or same thing. A mom comes in and it can still happen to me. I'm 42 years old. If my mom says something to me in just the right way, I'm going to go, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stop and I'm going to listen and I'm going to, hear what she has to say. So that parental voice in both of those situations. And also for me, in that scene in Rise of Skywalker, when Han is there, about halfway through, when it dawns on me that he's saying the same things and it's that that dialogue, I was just like, oh, like, it hits again. It's clever. It's kind of like when
I'm not gonna lie, man. I was in the theater crying. I mean, I was 50 years old, and I'm not gonna lie, I cried.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's also, again, those same ways, to me, the not the better version, my favorite version kind of that was in Last Jedi when Luke goes onto the Falcon and R2 plays the Leia message.
Great.
Holy cow. Like I was that had me just, melting in that moment, but
yeah. Okay.
But it's the voice. So that's an excellent.
Definitely the parent voice. So, so number 2, so we've done 7 through 3. Okay. So number 2 is another part A and part B. It's a dual thing because these parents both do the same thing.
Right.
Now we're going all the way back to the beginning, episode 1, Shmi Skywalker. I mean, okay. I assume she was a really great mom because Anakin loved her so much. And, unfortunately they were slaves. All parents, the hardest thing a parent has to do is to let their children grow up and go.
Mm-hmm.
And she was willing to let him go before he was even grown up because she knew it was the right thing for him. He would no longer be a slave. And as a mom, she wanted something better for her son.
Mm-hmm.
And for the galaxy, she felt like, hey, there's something he was meant to do. He was meant to help you. So she's doing this thing that you expect to do when the kid is more 18 to 20 and they're going to go out into the world and you let them learn to fly solo. Solo. But yeah, a parent has to let their child go. Like letting Timothy move out of the house and then get married was tough, but you learn to let him go. But she did this with her 10-year-old. And that speaks volumes for the kind of mom to me she was to Anakin was, I want what's best for you, and staying here with me as a slave is not what's best for you. And so she was willing to let him go. So what a great mom moment, and what a great thing that she did, even though it caused a lot of hurt and pain when he turned to the dark side, it still all ended up okay. And because from the beginning, mom did the right thing by letting her son go. So part B of that is another parent who had to let go. And they had to let go of someone who had become their son. And Din Djarin letting go of Grogu is another great moment because over the 2 seasons, this guy who's just not at all dad material learns to be a dad because he sees something in Grogu that was him. He lost his parents. And he was abandoned, and then he was taken in by some people who raised him. And so now he's taken on this role of dad to this little guy. And you can just tell episode by episode how, he's growing and he's learning and he's getting stern with the dad voice. No. I mean, he's learning. But then in the moment when Luke shows up, which we could talk another hour about that. When the moment Luke shows up, and he probably doesn't know, and he doesn't know who Luke Skywalker is. He doesn't care. That's not what his life is about. But he's a Jedi, and he knows that's where Grogu belongs. And just like Shmi had to let go of Anakin, the Mandalorian is like, this is what's best for you. And what a touching moment when Grogu touches his helmet and then he takes it off, and it's just all of that. But it was dad letting go and letting the son go to fly and to go out into the world and do what you have to do because that's what's best for the son. And Absolutely. A parent has to be able to be willing to let go. So that's my part A and part B of my number 2, top moment here. So
I love that so much. And I love in that, again, also as a parent, and I love that, I threw this category at you because you have a show called As Father and Son, and I'm like, we'll get him. But everything we're talking about, I'm like, that's me and my kids. So it was clearly as much for me as it was for you. But, my kids are still, 4 through 12. But like the summer before COVID, we took our oldest 2 to summer camp. And this was straight up for real, drop them off for a week, no phones, no contact, no anything, pick them up at the end of the week, summer camp. They were 11, I guess. And my wife had to work, or there was something that she couldn't take them up there. So I took them, and their other 2 sisters rode along, and we got up there we pull up, and I, find the counselor, who's, again, seems like the counselor was probably 12 years old herself. And, I go, and they're like, yeah, that's just me getting older, these college kids. But so we take their stuff in their room, and they get set up. And then I'm just kind of standing there, and I'm kind of waiting for like, and what do I do now? And the little counselor girl, she was just like, okay, well, you can go. And I was just like, I can go. And my girls just kind of looked at me, and they were like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I had that moment, like I walked out the door and I felt myself catch my breath, like, am I about to do this? And it was just summer camp. I wasn't sending them off to like the galactic center of the universe to train with a mystical bunch of knights. I was going to pick them up in a week, and they were going to sleep in a tent and have fun. But it was that leaving thing, because that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to protect them. And how can I protect them if I'm not with them? And so to bring that into, the Shmi thing, she lived a hard life, and probably the only comfort and peace she had in her life was that child. And so to let him go was the only bit of happiness she had. And so that makes that sacrifice even more powerful, because not only is she sending off the one thing she loves in the world to a place that she may never see again, but she's sending away her happiness. So what is she going to have left? She's going to get up and she's going to go to work for Gardula the Hutt or whoever it is, every day, and come back. And of course she ends up meeting Owen, and the whole, or not Owen, Kleeglars.
Kleeglars, yeah.
She's going to meet him. There's going to be some happy ending for her on that level. But just the power of that. And then the same thing with Den. Den, and if I was going to make a nitpick out of that whole part of that scene, was this Jedi, he basically sent him with Luke because Ahsoka told him he needs to be with the Jedi.
Yeah. Right.
Like, he really didn't know Ahsoka. They obviously bonded very quickly in the moments that she could communicate with Grogu. There was that whole thing. But like, this dude just comes rolling up the hallway, wipes out a bunch of people with his laser sword, and he goes, "Are you a Jedi?" He goes, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, time to go." Like, it was so quick.
He trusted him pretty quickly. Yeah,
it did. But I love the thing that struck me in that moment, and I think what changed it was Grogu waddles up to R2.
Oh, yeah.
That moment. And I don't know. I want to say I don't think it's because he recognizes R2 from the time he was at the temple, that whole deal.
I've heard people have their theories.
That's right. Well, there's also a silver-colored knob theory that plays into this, to where Grogu recognized R2 as looking like this little silver knob, which, first of all, Din should have sent that with him, but I'm sure he kept it to remember him by, but that's another thing.
Yeah.
But what I think it was, and it's almost like pets in a way, like a pet can sense when somebody's good, and can sense when, if my dog gets riled up, it's because you might not be that nice. There's an aura that pets can detect. But he goes up to him, and I think for R2, when he looks at him and there's that little bit of a connection, R2 kind of gets excited, and that's when Grogu looks at Luke, and he's like, "Okay, cool," and he raises his hands.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was a recognition. I think R2 recognized him as a species. He had seen Yoda before, and he's like, "Oh, I know what this is." And of course, Luke had already, knew the species or whatever, but it's that whole, like, it's okay to go thing. Yeah. And so as soon as he looked and raised his hands, there had to have been a part of Den that was like, well, if the kid's willing and he's not like, "Please don't make me go," and pawing for him and trying to get back, that had to have given him some of that comfort that he needed to make that choice.
Well, also, everything that has led up to that moment has been Grogu being in danger. Even being with Mando, people were after him. People were trying to get him. People were trying to hurt him. And if he can finally get him to, quote, his people, his kind, the Jedi, he's done his parental duty by getting him to safety. Because he was still going to be in danger if he stayed with Mando, because obviously Moff Gideon or whoever else out there that wanted Grogu was going to keep fighting to get him. But now it's not like he's brushing him off. Well, he's your problem. Now it's, no, this is actually safety. Plus, I just watched you destroy those freaking dark troopers that I couldn't. So yeah, he's safe now. He's safe with you.
Den clearly has a thing for, people that can hold their own in a fight, whether it's a Cobb Vanth, whether it's Bo, whether it's Ahsoka. He's like, okay, you can hold your own. You can take care of this person I've been protecting. For sure. Definitely respect. So, well, those are both fantastic.
All right. Well, let's. I'm gonna just for recap purposes. We've had from Seven County down Canaan's sacrifice, Bail Organa's message to Leia and Bloodlines, Galen Erso's message in Rogue One to Jyn, Vader and Anakin quote his return to save Luke and Leia, Han calling out to Ben and Leia reaching Ben through the Force, and then number 2 was Shmi and Din Djarin. And now, drum roll for the number 1.
That's right. I don't have a good fancy drum roll for you, but
okay, I may have subverted your expectation with all of these wonderful, wonderful things that I have done and what I am about to do now.
Oh, I like that. That's what Star Wars is about. Subverting expectations.
My number 1 parental moment, as I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, this works, is Chewbacca, son of Adichittukuk. I said that right. Adichittukuk. Making it home for Life Day.
Oh my God.
That is the best dad moment. He risked everything to get home to Mala and Lumpawaru.
That's right.
He risked it all. I mean, you know what, Dad? You got to be home for Christmas, right? You got to be home for Life Day. So Chewie and Han risked it all to get through whatever blockades and whatever stormtroopers they had to get around to be home so that he could put on that freaking huge robe and then Leia could come out and sing and they could be there for Life Day. That is the best parental moment in Star Wars.
My hat's off to you, sir. Cheers. Cheers to that moment. That is amazing. I love that. I mean,
you got to be home for the holidays, man. That's what a dad does.
Holidays. That's what you do. I mean,
he's out with his buddy. He's got the life debt. He owes Han. He's got to stick with Han. But I got to be home for Life Day. You hear me? I got to be home for Lumpy or Waru as he is now. Yeah.
Here we are. We're upsetting the expectations. Even the chat. Brendan said, "Oh my,
yeah, oh my."
It's so good. In fact, I don't know why, but it makes me think of Billy Pelzer's dad in Gremlins when he's out hawking his inventions. It's Christmas time. Whatever's taking over the town, but he's on the phone at a convention. I'm going to get home as soon as I can, pal. We need Mr. Pelzer to step it up a little bit more.
That's funny.
That's actually fantastic. I really, really love that. I was not prepared for that in the best possible way.
Well, honestly, Shmi and Din was actually number 1, but I decided I thought, I've been pretty heavy on all this. Let's just throw something in there for the fun of it, because that's what we're all here for, right? It's the fun of it. And the worst Star Wars ever, the holiday special. I had to make it part of this, and also for it to be the number 1 moment, because, hey, Chewie's a dad. We don't think about that. Chewie is a dad.
Chewie's a dad. Okay,
let's think of it this way. Chewie is a dad, but he was also an uncle because he loved Ben Solo, and he could have killed Ben, but what did he do? He wounded him instead of shooting him to kill.
That's exactly right. And I love that. And I've heard several people make that point along the way. I mean, he could have taken him completely out, but there was that part of him. And, I love, I can't think of the name of the artist now, but there's an artist on Instagram that does all the drawings and pictures in the style of Calvin and Hobbes, but it's little Ben, Chewie, and half of them are like Chewie carrying Ben around, or pushing him on the swing like Calvin and Hobbes would. And I know it's it's an artistic interpretation of something else we know, but you look at it and you go, that could have well been it. When Ben was a kid, before he went with Luke, he was passed back and forth between Han and Leia, or Han and Leia were there together, or Chewie's in there working on the Falcon and Ben's climbing on his back going, what are you doing? What's going on in here?
Yeah.
There is that strong connection, even in a parental form. All of our uncles on certain levels parented us somewhere. They may have been the uncles that taught us to do the cool stuff our parents didn't want us to do. Yeah. But Chewie might have done that too. Hey, come let me teach you how to shoot this big bowcaster, or, roast porgs for snack, or whatever it is that he did.
Yeah.
But there was absolutely that connection there. And so, and I love the parallel too. I didn't think about this till you said it, but Chewie's a dad, but Chewie's life/career is that he's out flying around the galaxy with Han Solo. Mm-hmm. And what we get for most of Han Solo, even when he's married or with Leia and has a kid, we certainly see it in Last Jedi, or in Force Awakens. I'm sorry. When Han and Leia come back together, he did what he knew to do. He didn't know how to raise his kid, or his kid turned bad, and so he took off. And so Chewie and Han are both kind of absentee fathering out flying. Now, in Chewie's culture, it may have just been like, that's his job. That's what he does. And he sends credits and, you know, Kashyyyk dollars back to us or whatever it is. But
he's not just being a deadbeat dad. He's taking care of the family. Yeah.
That's right. But there's still some parallels of like the absentee fatherism, or I don't know, something. Maybe I'm making more connections that are actually there.
That's okay. That's what we're doing here with this art, is we're subjectively making it what we want it to fit our narrative. And all remaining systems, you're right. I'm glad no one could have predicted that was the top pick. but yes, top pick, because if you do think about it, it is in canon now. The Aftermath books actually did have Chewie's wife and son in them. And he is a dad. Now he's got this life debt with Han that he's always going to be with Han, and he's honoring that life debt. But I mean, he made it home for Life Day, guys. Let's give him some credit. He's a good dad.
He did his part. He got there. He dealt with, you know, B. Arthur and everything else that had to be dealt with.
Yeah.
All along the way. Wow. Well, I am so overjoyed that I could not have predicted how that was going to turn out the way you think, as Luke says.
That's right.
But that is fantastic. That is an excellent list. And I'm so thankful that you were willing to take on that exercise with me.
I'm so glad you had me do it.
I love all your picks. Of course, I love Rebel stuff. I love Bloodline. You know, like we said, and I think, you know, one of the things that was really powerful for me, I guess it was back this summer, was when Shannon did the Moment Star Wars Spoke to Me as a Father video, and you guys were in that. And I was able to be in there as well and talk about, you know, my experience with my kids and certainly with Harper. But I mean, watching that video, like every single person's story got me choked up, because it hits me, you know, as the kids say, in the feels, and hits me in exactly where I am or where I came from. I, you know, grew up with Star Wars because of my dad. And, you know, so I have that connection there. My favorite comment when that video premiered and when it came out on YouTube, we had it on the TV, and everybody in my house sat down and watched it with me. And when it was over with, I looked at my wife, and of course she had tears in her face, probably just from my part. But she looked at me, she goes, "This is my favorite Star Wars movie of all of them."
That's great.
And I was like, "Well, that's fine. I got you to watch a Star Wars. I'll take what I can." But yeah, that connecting point that we see ourselves in Star Wars, more than just I wanted to be Han Solo, more than I just wanted to be, you know, Luke Skywalker. As I change and grow up, even the kid that's still inside of me, like we joked at the beginning, the grown up that I am right now sees a different recognition, a different thing. You know, the part that always hits me, maybe as much as anything else, is in Last Jedi, when Luke is sitting there and he's talking to Yoda, and he talks about the burden of masters. We are what they grow beyond. I always get that wrong. I think I actually got it right this time. We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of a master. You know, that's what I want. I want my kids to be better than me. I want my kids to grow beyond me and seek more and reach more and help more and do more. And I hope that I'm just along the way to not totally mess it up.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great moment. That's one of my favorite moments in The Last Jedi, is when Yoda teaches Master Skywalker one more lesson that he still needed to learn, because the whiny farm boy from Tatooine had kind of reared his ugly head again, and Master Yoda had to, you know, knock him on the head with the cane and be like, "Hey, man, you're doing it again.
You're missing it still.
You're missing the point here." And then there's that moment when Luke takes it in and gets it, and then the camera pans out on their backs, and you see that tree burning in the shape of sorry, Siri. Get on again. I hate Siri. So I got to quit saying her name. But when the tree, and what is the rebel symbol? I can't think of what the bird is called.
Starbird.
The Starbird. So that image is one of my favorite images in all of Star Wars, for sure, in The Last Jedi. But that moment was just so impactful because Yoda taught that lesson, and it is a great lesson. And, you know, I could do parallels of Luke being sort of a parent in a way, though he really didn't have the opportunity to be to Rey. But in that moment, Yoda was kind of parenting Luke, like, "Hey, man, we are what they grow beyond."
That's exactly right.
That's a great quote. That is
So powerful, so amazing. David, I can't thank you enough for doing this tonight, for hanging out. We have gotten to about an hour, and so I don't want to keep you too much later. I don't want to keep any of those that are watching along. If you're listening on the podcast, I hope you have enjoyed this conversation. I want to encourage everybody to find David on Twitter. David, where can everybody find you and keep up with what you and Timothy are doing?
Okay, so our channel on YouTube is As Father and Son. So look that up on YouTube. We actually aren't a true podcast. We aren't out there on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but I want to look into that. That's actually something I'm hoping to do this year. But we mainly just do YouTube videos. But on Twitter, you can look us up at ASFAS92. So that's As Fast. It stands for As Father and Son, and 92, because that's the year Timothy was born. So we've been doing this As Father and Son thing since 1992. And then you can look me up. I'm at David L. Drennan, all one word, on Twitter.
Absolutely.
Guys,
I'm going to put all those links in the show notes so that everybody can find you if they get to the podcast. And I want you to plug one other project that you're a part of, and we kind of talked about it up front. Let's get some silver colored knob going on here.
So Around the Galaxy, the host of Around the Galaxy, Pete Fletzer, and then one of the hosts from the Bombad cast, Scotty J. Rowe, and we're in a little group, a little project, a little band. We play some music and write some Star Wars related songs. We did a song about the Mandalorian called This Is the Way last year. So after the pandemic hit and people were trying to figure out fun things to do, they recorded all their parts at their house. We're in their respective states. I'm in Arkansas. I recorded my stuff, and we had Pete. He's just great with all sorts of software. And so he used the software he has. He recorded the drums and the bass, and then I sent in my vocals and guitar and stuff. And so we have some great songs. So look up on Twitter. It's at SCK Project. And it stands for Silver Colored Knob, because there was a joke going around about the silver colored knob that Grogu was playing with. And somehow a tweet went out, and Pete said, that's going to be the next band I'm in. It's called Silver Colored Knob. And I said, hey, I want to join that band. Scotty did too. And then all of a sudden we actually did it. So you can check us out. Now, we do have some videos, some music videos, but that is on Pete with Around the Galaxy. His podcast is a part of Beyond the Blast Doors Network. So you can go out there and look up Silver Colored Knob videos on their YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
So that's a ton of plugs. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, they're a lot of fun, and they're totally worth it. I encourage everybody to check out Silver Colored Knob, check out David, and to all of our listeners, to all of our watchers, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here, hanging out. I'm enjoying this live format. I'm enjoying having the chance to talk to our guests. We've got several fun guests lined up over the next several weeks, and then we're going to probably get into our canon shows. We're going to dig into Empire Strikes Back. We've broken it down into, I think, 7 different categories with themes. We'll work our way through that. In the meantime, if you are not following us already on Twitter, you can find us at WillsPod. Our podcast is available anywhere that you get podcasts. We would love for you to share it on your feeds, invite more of your friends to come and join us. And until we are together again next time, may the Force be with you always.